Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group, we're driving a 2009 BMW 650i convertible. This is the E64 generation for the BMW nerds out there. It packs a 4.8-liter V8, making 360 horsepower, made into a 6-speed automatic transmission. It's an N62 if we want to get specific about power plants, but this was once a status symbol, and as you can tell, this one is a bit rough around the edges. Holy cow, it's been used and abused and parked wherever they please. What a luxury. I can only imagine what it feels like to park your expensive BMW back in the day anywhere you want, as close to the store. Don't even worry about the shopping carts. There's scratches, there's cracks. This thing has definitely seen better days, but you have to appreciate somebody who bought a car and really just used the heck out of it with no shame. I think we can get behind that. As you come around the car, you'll see more and more just kind of yikes things. There's definitely a lot going on here, but hey, it clearly has not been put into a tree, so that's great news. Now, it's easy to make fun of this generation of BMW, but it's important because it's a transitionary time. Chris Bangle is starting to Bangleize the world, and I gotta say, to me, these generations sort of aged like milk until recently, because for whatever reason, suddenly this body style as an M6 would kind of do it for me. And to have a convertible with the N62 V8, which sounds pretty good, but to have a convertible with a screaming V10, now we're talking. So even though this is kind of a polarizing design that you may not love, it definitely was conceptual and pretty wild that it made it to the market. Gluing us to the road is a 245 section tire, front and rear. Not a whole lot of torque to manage in this thing, and I'd imagine whoever is driving this is probably more of like the cruise around town grocery getter. But the beauty of this car is that you can still kind of fit some things in the back. It's certainly tight back there. They've got sort of that old 8 Series rear bench bucket kind of vibe, like they sit way low. I do dig that. And let's take a look under the hood. And there you have your N62, which either may excite you or frighten you, because these can be a bit of maintenance pigs. But if you do take care of them and you keep them from leaking too much oil, they'll do right by you. But you do have to keep your eye out, so when you do see these 6 Series out there for super cheap money, be aware that there is no free lunch. Sometimes you really got to put in the elbow grease on the other side of that transaction. And in the trunk, not a ton of space back here because we got to make room for that roof, but I guess enough to get the job done. Now, it's too easy to kind of dog on these cars, so I'm not going to, because I do think they have some really wild redeeming qualities. The first of which is the window design, because it has no B-pillar. So first, let's just go ahead. We put our key in sort of this column ignition. It does not turn, but you know, you put it in and then you have your push button start. That's very different than, say, the E92, where you just pop it into the front. But on this little panel here, we've got some options, because we can trigger this to lower that rear glass. Very cool. Or put that back up. Or we can hit this button and we can lower all the windows at once. I love that. That is so cool and clever. Doesn't require extra buttons over here. You just decide how you'd like these two switches to operate. So let's get it started and put the roof down. Very familiar gauge clusters and very familiar BMW sounds, which is giving me a bit of PTSD, because the noise it makes to tell you to put your seatbelt on or that it's 37 degrees is the same noise that indicates a check engine issue or literally any other failure mode in the car. So let's put this roof down. We've got our roof controls here. We'll knock these down, and then And with a bit of whining, now you have your beautiful 6 Series convertible ready to go topless. And you can still pop that glass up if you so choose, because that'll probably help with some of that wind buffeting. Kind of cool. And now it looks a heck of a lot better. It starts to make a lot more sense. It's a pretty sleek design, and you can tell that this was BMW trying to have fun, and that's not always easy for big German car makers to make fun cars, but this is kind of that California LA vibe. This would have been pretty high-end back in '09 for BMW. So you've got your tilting, telescoping wheel. That's, of course, motorized. And it does have a heated steering wheel, which I'm thankful for today because, as indicated on the center display, it's only 45 degrees. Very familiar switchgear in here for the era. So we'll pop it in drive and roll away. It's pretty smooth, but man, it's actually quick. I love the power delivery. Everybody loves a BMW V8 because they just climb in power linearly, and they always feel really at home above 4,000 RPM to redline. There's something about that that just never gets old and always sounds good. But the car doesn't necessarily encourage me to push it that way, which is nice because this is supposed to be kind of a cruiser. Something a little sportier than, say, an SL Mercedes, but definitely something luxurious to be able to just kind of dawdle around in comfortably. Steering is weighted well. I wish BMW would go back to this kind of steering because it actually feels good. It actually feels like premium. Heavy enough, but light enough. It's just like the perfect compromise. Everything's so heavy now to simulate sportiness, and I think it's just so silly. Oh, that sounds great. It's so cool to have a nice smooth V8 platform in the 650 just because it gives you all that nice low end torque. It's a wonderful thing to kind of waft on that wave. The suspension is pretty compliant. It's just such a relief from all the stiff nightmare suspensions we're getting today, and the roads are only getting worse. So it's kind of frustrating to be in such stiff cars lately. Everyone's going so heavy with the steering and stiff with the suspensions in an effort to make things appear sporty to these silly masses who just don't seem to understand the point of driving. A little bit of body roll is okay, and this is controlled and it's lovely. Like, you want to have a little bit of compression so you can get things done. And thank you. You guys are doing God's work making these roads less potholy. Let's get it out on the highway. This seems like where it probably belongs, where it wants to live. For a naturally aspirated V8, this thing gets up and goes pretty darn quick. See if that glass does us any good. And it always feels weird with that glass up just because it's just like no frame, just edges. gotta love the sound of this thing. It's so meaty and beefy. Being an automatic transmission with a torque converter versus a dual clutch transmission, or even like SMG, like the SMG3 that was in the M6, this is smooth. This is nice to drive. It just applies power properly. You don't get any big shunts or bangs into the next gear. It certainly doesn't shift as fast as a DCT, but I don't think its purpose warrants it. It makes a lot of sense with this 6-speed. And I'm actually going to pull off and throw this top up because I do want to see how quiet it is with the roof. For a soft top, this is pretty insulated. I got my toasty heated seats, my toasted heated steering wheel, and I don't have a whole lot of road noise to speak of. So to me, the E63 and E64 BMWs are a bit polarizing because you either love them or hate them. This style has grown on me quite a bit. I'm starting to love it. I'm starting to become less of a hater, but I have to say, it makes a lot more sense when it has a naturally aspirated V10 under the hood with the S85 instead of this V8, because I think that's what makes this generation of BMW so special. The design looks very concept. It's impressive that it even made it out to the market because it's very bulbous and round and kind of experimental. And BMW, as evidenced by today's designs, is certainly not afraid to take some risks. And they don't seem to care what people think. People seem to still buy the BMWs regardless of their appearance somehow. I do think that E39s were kind of like the last beautiful Beamers, but alas, here we are. With the sound of this N62, it's not a disappointment. It has lovely amounts of torque. Its power climbs to redline beautifully. And sure, it's kind of sporty, but it's not necessarily a sports car. I don't think you would ever take this to a racetrack. I don't think you would ever really carve a back road aggressively. I mean, you could, but this car makes so much more sense as a fun daily driver in a beach town, just something that you're gonna go enjoy. It's less of a status symbol today just because we know how much it costs to run these things, and that's kind of a pain. So if you love it, I get it, but make sure that you're keeping up with the gaskets and the oil changes, and maybe stopping at stop signs so you don't get smashed on a back road. So thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you to Bond Group for tossing me the keys to this 650. I always had kind of a relationship with the 650i because my old boss back in my garment industry days owned one in North Carolina, and he loved his 650. The family loved the 650. It was a bit of a status symbol. It was kind of a signature of, hey, we're doing okay. We're going to the golf course. We're doing our thing. And I always appreciated his love for that BMW. So today, we honor it. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.